Hey, morning. Hey, Vanessa.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm fine. So, Elliot, I'm going to change your slides for you, so just give me a nudge. Do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Morning, everyone. Hope you're well. Um, agree, Vanessa. Really interesting stuff there, Laura. I learned loads watching that. My name is Elliot Ray, and I'm the founder of a platform called Music Football Fatherhood. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about engaging men in conversations around gender equality. So when I was in the workplace, I was part of gender networks, part of parenting networks, chaired a parenting network, and I know firsthand that it was quite difficult to engage men in those conversations. And I think over the years, I've learned some things. So hopefully, I can bring a new perspective to that. Can we go on to the next slide, please, Vanessa? And the following slide. So before I go into the main part, it would be good to introduce myself. Because you're probably thinking, who is this person talking to you, and what qualifies him to talk on this? So I'll whiz through what I do. So I've held roles in diversity inclusion. My last role was as the head of D&I delivery at the Treasury. And previous to that, I was head of Project Race in DEFRA, Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So the Treasury was a wide role that looked at implementing our D&I strategy across all of the characteristics and wider work too. And the work in DEFRA was particularly around race. So head of a project called Project Race, looking at race equality in the environmental sector. And I left that job shortly around this time last year, actually. So just in the midst of everything that was going on with the murder of George Floyd. But I think the real reason I'm here is that I run a platform called Music Football Fatherhood, and this is my baby. I have another baby, but this is one of my babies, and it's a parenting and lifestyle platform for men. We're all about open conversations around fatherhood. So we aim to create open spaces for conversations for men to share the ups and downs of parenting. We champion equal parenting and gender equality, and we're also really keen on showing a diverse range of fatherhood, a positive representation of diverse fatherhood too. And we do that through our popular blog. We have one of the most popular blogs in the UK for dads. We have a podcast. We do community events, and we're soon to be launching peer support sessions for new dads as well at the end of June, which I'm really, really excited about. So through MFF, I got really involved in equal parenting, and I've been involved in some research with Business in the Community, the Equal Lives report, which if you haven't seen it, it's an amazing report. Definitely recommend you checking that out. And I've also done work with University of Birmingham to launch their fatherhood in a workplace toolkit. And that was the last event we did just before lockdown. I think it was late March last year. We were in Parliament launching this toolkit. It was at that point we weren't quite sure whether we could shake hands or not. And then 2 weeks later, we were in lockdown. I'm also a writer, writing for various mainstream publications, including The Independent. And there's a funny story, actually. My last piece for The Independent was they asked me to respond to The Rock having a new baby, because The Rock had done an Instagram post around him having a new baby and him at the birth and whatnot. So I did the piece and wrote it and thought, okay, they published it, great, whatever. I went to sleep, and then when I woke up in the morning, my phone was going crazy. I had all these messages, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I was like, am I in trouble? Have I done something wrong? And it turned out that The Rock had shared it on Twitter and written a really nice message about the words that I said, which was amazing. So since then, I've been telling everyone that me and The Rock are mates now, and I think we are. He hasn't responded to any of my messages. I'm sure he's busy. I'm sure he gets a lot of texts and a lot of messages, but we are friends. We're friends. I'm holding that. I also do a lot of talks around engaging dads and engaging men with different organizations, corporate organizations, charities, and just started working with the NHS as well. And that's around engaging men in conversations about gender equality, engaging dads, and addressing some of those issues that men face that are important to us tackling gender equality well. And I'm also lucky enough to be awarded by the United Nations the He for She Changemaker of the Year award a couple of years ago, where I actually met Vanessa. So that's a little bit about me, but I think the biggest job and my hardest job is as a dad. I used to look a lot younger, seriously. I've aged in the last few years. It's most definitely the biggest job of my life. And it is really the driving reason why I do all the stuff that I do. So when my daughter Eleni was born, she was very sick. and it was a traumatic birth experience. We were in NICU, this is intensive care for babies, for 2 weeks. And after that, it was about coming home. My wife was obviously at home, and I had, my 2 weeks was up, so I went back to work. So my wife ended up getting diagnosed with postnatal anxiety, and I had PTSD. And what I realized through that period is that the support for me in terms of my mental health and my well-being was really lacking, actually, from different parts of society, from maybe from the workplace, from also from the NHS as well. So I really realized that. So I'm really passionate about how we support new dads in that space. But also the other thing I realized is that the decisions that me and my wife were making in terms of work life and how we're going to design our life in the future, the decisions that we made in that first 2 years were really pivotal to how we were going to continue as a couple and a family in the future. So I was lucky enough to work in a workplace where actually I could work flexibly, and I changed my working pattern about 3 or 4 times in that first two years. I had a manager who was very senior, and he was a dad of 4 girls, and he kind of completely understood. So he was really good in that sense. So I did compressed hours. I worked part-time for a period. I did homework on a Friday, and what that allowed me to do was to maintain that attachment and that bond with my baby. But it also meant that obviously we could become equal parents, and I would end up doing the nursery pickups and all that sort of stuff, and so my wife could go back into work, and she's now working in communications as a senior communications leader. And what I learned from that period was the importance of the flexibility that I had, and how that allowed me to live a more full life and not feel that pressure that I have to be the main breadwinner, but also allowed my wife to get back into the workplace and thrive and maintain. But what I saw was that that wasn't always prevalent in different spaces. And in talking to friends and family, that wasn't always the norm. I was quite lucky. I forced through some things, but I was quite lucky in the environment that I worked in and the line manager that I worked with as well. But the other thing I did get a sense of, and I do get a sense of now in MFF, we have a massive community of dads, is that there's so many dads and men just in general who want to do things differently, who want to approach life and the way they work and live in a different way, especially in the last year with the pandemic. Things have changed so much. And the old fashioned notion of the man having to work 9 to 5, getting home, only seeing the kids at bedtime, um, having to be the main breadwinner, they just don't want to subscribe to that too much. Don't get me wrong, people want to work hard and they want to achieve stuff, but they're expecting a more full life, and they're expecting difference. So how do we engage with that portion of society, that growing number of men who are looking to do things differently? And I think when we're talking about engaging men in conversations about gender equality, it is really important to talk to them about how they can be allies, and talk to them about how they can um, help with issues that particularly affect women. But what is also really important to do is engage them in the issues that affect them, and the things that they are negatively affected by, the gender-based issues that men suffer from. And I think when we can start to do that and bring them into those conversations, we can use that and get them into that environment, in that space, then tackle some of the wider issues too. So I talk to men about how we can reimagine the future, how dismantling patriarchy is actually good for everyone, them too, how we can be better allies to women, and ask them to think about how they can change the way they work and live, and what impacts that would have on themselves, their partners, their families, and society as a whole. For me, it's about finding commonality. It's not actually men against women or white against black. For me personally, there's good people and there's bad people. And the good people who want to change, we have the same goals. And it's about identifying those people and finding the best way to engage with them. So let's go on to a few of the different kind of topics that I think are on men's radars at the moment. So there's a few. I picked out four kind of key things I think we should be talking to men about. So the first one is around mental health. We know there's a current mental health crisis. 12.5% of men will suffer from common mental health problems like depression and anxiety. Men are nearly 3 times as likely as women to become dependent on alcohol. and men are less likely to access psychological therapies. Only 36% of referrals to the NHS talking therapies are for men, and 3 out of 4 suicides are by men too. Why is this? I think there are many reasons, but underlying all of this, I think, is societal expectations and traditional gender roles. Um, they play a big part in, first of all, why men feel that pressure, but also why they are less likely to seek help and to talk to people. You need to be, unfortunately, quite a brave person as a man in this society to speak up and admit that maybe you're struggling and things aren't going so well. I mean, from my own experience, when I had PTSD when my daughter was born, the only person I was told was my wife. I only told my parents last week because I've written it in a book and they were about to read the book, so I thought I better tell them before they read the book, but we'll get onto that in a bit. And I think there is things that we can do to talk to men about mental health, and ultimately, if we can improve, first of all, address this and acknowledge it, but also work to improve it, it has benefits for everyone. When men commit suicide, when men are going through depression, anxiety, that has negative effects on everyone, and a lot of the time it is women that will pick up the pieces. So fatherhood is a massive topic, and one I find is a really great way of engaging men in gender equality, actually, because I think, unfortunately, for the first time for a lot of men, it is the first time they've probably really seen the impacts of gender equality close to home, and they are fully involved in the process. So fatherhood is a big topic. 1 in 10 dads will suffer from postnatal depression. The challenges of new dads in the workplace often aren't recognized. There's so many stories of new dads going back into the workplace, and maybe for a couple of weeks the colleagues are asking you how's the baby, and then after that it's just back to work. And the acknowledgement of the sleep deprivation that dad is facing, the acknowledgement of the stress of having a newborn is not always recognized in that way, and I think we can do a lot to talk about that. And not just new dads, but when fathers are older, men are twice as likely to have their flexible working requests declined. So why is this? Again, I think it's, again, some of the same fundamental issues around gendered parenting roles, the idea that caring is for women and being the main breadwinner is for men. But a lot of people are doing things differently now. The ONS study has showed that in the last year in lockdown, men are taking on more childcare than ever before, which is great to see. But I think it is really important to address this issue now, because as we look at going back into the office, it's very easy, and it could be very easy, for us to fall back into the system that we had before. And I think it is an important time to grasp, because a lot of people have experienced something different. And engaging men and talking to men now about their role as fathers and what they want it to look like in the future, in the next couple of years, it's a great time to have that conversation. And ultimately, supporting dads is essential for addressing gender equality. You probably know as much as me that the gender pay gap gets really serious when the first baby is born into a family. And that's because normally, traditionally, it'll be the man that says, okay, I need to go and knuckle down and work harder now, and get a promotion and provide for my family. They go and work even harder, and they earn more. And then the mum will stay at home. Maybe she will be a stay-at-home mum traditionally, or maybe at least work part-time. Um, so if we can, support those new dads and ensure they can work flexibly and ensure they can be fully involved, equal parents, what it does is it opens up for their partner and the mother of their child to do the same thing as well. And I think we are seeing that more and more. More and more dads are working in that way. It's just that the narrative and the systems and the processes haven't necessarily caught up with that. But we are seeing some good practice. Aviva, for example. I feel like I should get commission from Aviva because I go around talking about them all the time. But 6 months full pay for the mum and the dad is amazing. Vodafone also do some good work in that area too, and they are really leading the way. So I think talking to men about fatherhood is essential for engaging them in quality conversations about gender equality. And then masculinity. So the world has changed so much over the last, I'll say 20 years. The world has changed a lot. And what it means to be a man is different now to what it was in the 70s or the 80s, which is a good thing, is a positive thing. But feel like, and from conversations with our MFF community, there are a lot of dads that are trying to figure out, a lot of men trying to figure out who they are really. What does it mean to be a man in 2021? What does that mean for our relationships? What does that mean for our relationship with our children? What does that mean for the way we approach work? What does that mean for how open we are about the challenges that we face? And I think we should be having conversations with men about that, about what are their views on racism, views on sexism, how do they feel about being included in the diversity inclusion agenda. Like, those kind of conversations are really important, and when we engage them in that way, we are bringing them into the conversation. It's not an us versus them, it's we acknowledging that the world has changed for you too. Inherently, most people are good people. And let's talk about how we can better the world for all of us, which ultimately gets the outcomes that you want, that I want, and that we share. So we do a lot of work in talking to men about masculinity in this changing world. And the last thing I want to touch on is around advocacy. So how can men be effective allies to women? After the Sarah Everard murder earlier this year, we saw a lot of conversations, a lot of men thinking about their own allyship and what that means. And I think it's good to have those conversations with men and create open spaces for them to talk about what allyship looks like. So how do you acknowledge male privilege? How do you show solidarity? How do you understand the causes of gender equality and the fact that they're universal? How do you challenge negative masculinities, and how do you look at things from an intersectional lens? And I think those conversations are really important, and of course will have benefits for everyone. And I think I really want to to say that it's not men versus women. We are working towards the same goal, and it's about approaching it with that understanding and creating environments where we can include men in the conversation. And those four themes that I talked on: mental health, fatherhood, masculinity, advocacy, they are key themes of our new book. This is my other baby. When I said MFF is my baby, I have a daughter, and my third baby, the newest addition to the family, is Dad, which is our new book, which just got delivered to my house on Thursday, I think it was. And it's going to be available from Waterstones and W.H. Smith from Tuesday, which is amazing. Still very surreal holding this in my hands. But the book is a powerful collection of 20 men who have come together from different backgrounds, different ages, all over the UK, and they have been so honest, so honest, and so vulnerable and so raw in talking about and writing their stories of fatherhood. We've got dads, Alec, for example, who writes about losing his wife during childbirth. We've got Andy, who had 3 miscarriages, or Jamie had a stillbirth. Those really difficult moments in life, from a dad's perspective, is amazing to see written down. But we also have dads that write about kind of some of the everyday challenges that all men will face, like work-life balance, like identity and finding time for hobbies after being a father, shared parental leave and equal parenting, those kind of everyday things that a lot of dads will experience. And what we hope this book will achieve is open conversations around fatherhood and allow for that more open conversation. So I really want it to be used as a tool. At the moment, we are doing talks around it. We are doing some book readings. We are having conversations about the themes in the book. And I think it's a great conversation starter for families, for colleagues, to go a bit deeper and start to address some of those themes that I touched on before. So how can I help? So let's go to the next slide, please, Vanessa. So as I mentioned, as well as doing MFF and all that stuff, I do go around and I do speaking and webinars and speak about a few things. So the first one is around redefining masculinity, allyship, and engaging men in conversations about gender equality. So really immersive sessions, open sessions, where we can have those kind of conversations around what allyship looks like. around what being a man looks like, and involvement in that conversation, and then talk to them about, okay, if we can tackle those things, what does that mean for gender equality, and what does that mean for you as well? We also do loads of stuff around supporting working dads. So we do an Engaging Dads workshop where I will talk a little bit like this. We'll do some quizzes, some breakout rooms, get people sharing around their family's experiences, which is really interesting because you can work with people for years and not know that they've got twins or identical twins or something like that. So having some conversations about how they design their work life is really, really interesting. Getting a panel of dads from that organization talking as well, and then getting into the detail around, okay, what are the actionable things that you can do? Like, what are the tangible things you can do around policy, tangible things around culture change, and around line management to improve how the support for working dads plays out? And then what are the impacts of that for gender equality, for the pay gap, for well-being, for retention, for attachment to baby and the baby's outcomes, which is obviously one of the most important things too. And then lastly, from my own experiences, really passionate about mental health and what the organization and workplaces can do to support. I think there is a lot that can be done actually. So yeah, really, really passionate about talking about how we can help support men and the truth about mental health, and covering some of those statistics as well. Next slide, please. Is there another slide? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's the last slide. So I'm on LinkedIn, Elliot Ray, and my email address is there. So I hope you found that interesting and insightful. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Vanessa.